Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill.
Hello and welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are excited to have as a guest Todd Miller. Todd is the president of Isaiah Industries and also the co-host of the Construction Disruption Podcast. And Todd is an expert in the manufacturing side of construction and has been heavily involved in the roofing industry as a whole. We're going to talk today about what is happening as it relates to the supply chain and also what we've learned over this last year while he's been hosting his podcast. So thank you for joining us today, Todd. Excited to have another conversation together.
Hey, it's great to be here. I am too. Thank you.
Yeah, you had me on a guest with your podcast, the Construction Disruption Podcast, a couple weeks back, and it was a lot of fun. I thought, man, we got to have you back on over here too.
Well, I enjoyed it, and looking forward to getting that episode with you published here in a few weeks. So it turned out real well. It's going to be good.
Yeah, thank you. It really was a lot of fun. And as we've been talking, I mean, you were on our podcast maybe a year or two ago. It's been a little while, and we both had a lot of guests in the meantime and had a lot of conversations. And I'm just interested to learn, since we last spoke, what are you seeing that is going on with the supply chain now?
Well, of course, most of our raw materials, as a metal roofing manufacturer, most of our raw materials are metals and coatings and corrugated, things like that, packaging. Things have gotten a little bit closer to, what at one time we called normal. I think one of the things that happened, though, that kind of caught our industry quite a bit. So back when it was really difficult to get metal back in 2021 into 2022, a lot of folks went out and sourced offshore metal. So they started trying to buy metal any place they could possibly get it because domestic metal was in painfully short supply. Well, as it turned out, we all kind of flooded the overseas markets as well. So a lot of times what happened was metal that we had ordered, and when I say we, I mean we as an industry, not just our company, metal that the industry had ordered, say, in late 2021 for arrival in early 2022, didn't arrive until late 2022. So in the meantime, everyone had kind of figured up domestic ways to kind of resupply their warehouses and inventory. And then all of a sudden, this foreign metal started hitting people in late 2022 that literally had been on order for 10 or 12 months. And so a lot of manufacturers closed out 2022 pretty high on inventory. I remember talking to one of my competitors, and he said literally of one particular type of metal, he had over a 2-year supply at that point.
Wow.
And so I think even though things have kind of returned to normal in terms of being able to get product, I think things are going to continue to be rocky because as you think about that, people are using up all this raw material that they had gotten late. And now all of a sudden that means that their current supply orders are going to be a little bit artificially low. So I don't know. I think it's going to continue to be a little bit of up and down and rockiness. We'll see. But for right now, at least, I think people are supplying customers fairly well, and that's what you want.
Right. So you're basically, what you're saying is there were times when the metal would come in and rather than cap and crotch, it was some Frankenberry metal. Right.
Exactly. You got all kinds of crazy stuff. But the worst thing is you didn't get it when you wanted it. But then eventually when it showed up, you had too much of it. So yeah, it's definitely been a struggle. Another thing that's kind of a long-term picture thing that I think our industry really needs to watch. And I have to think this is other industries as well. But all of a sudden, in the midst of everything, it came up that one of the chemicals used in the primary coating used on quality metal roofing systems is a chemical that is being used in lithium-ion batteries being made for electric vehicles. And so suddenly that industry, which comparatively uses less per unit than we use, they were willing to pay big dollars for it because they had to have it for their batteries. And suddenly that caused some shortages as well. And, who would have ever thought it that, something occurring in the electric vehicle industry would end up impacting my ability to buy raw materials for metal building materials. But I think that as we go forward, we're probably going to see more of that type of thing, with some of these shortages that keep coming up in certain chemicals. And again, the electric vehicle industry really kind of requiring things that the previous automotive vehicle industry didn't require. So I think that's going to be something we'll really have to continue to keep our eye on. That one chemical I talked about may not be the last one that we run into those types of problems with.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it makes me wonder also, are these shortages causing us to use subpar materials? Have you noticed that, some of the things that have been being used to replace what someone might normally use, that they're actually settling for a lower quality product?
That's a good question and something I've wondered about too. In the building materials industries, realistically, most of our total raw material components list is pretty small. But as I have talked to people in recent years, both from the automotive industry and also from the housing construction industry, yes, they have both said that there have been times we've had to substitute products that normally we never would have used. And so whether that jeopardizes future performance or integrity of that vehicle or that home or other structure, I don't know, but you have to think it might.
Yeah, so with, again, as a response to the challenges that we've been through as an industry, are you seeing companies stockpiling and trying to source a lot of their own stuff that they've sort of stocked up, as opposed to waiting around and ordering things like they used to pre-pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's trying to do a whole lot more planning, and those, fancy ERP systems that we all had invested in years ago, we're now figuring out, okay, I need to figure out how to actually use this thing to help me with my planning. So, yeah, I think everyone's a little bit more cautious. By the same token, you throw in a little bit of uncertainty there about the economy, and that makes people not want to go hog wild on inventory by any means either. I mean, they don't want to go stealing raw materials from the indigenous people in northern Canada or something, because the demand may not be there long term. They may not need that stuff. So, yeah, it's all definitely a period of adjustment. There's no doubt about it.
So are you seeing a new normal that you think will be here to stay as far as companies are dealing with these challenges?
Well, I think we as a manufacturer, one of the things that we have really stressed to our customers who are typically home improvement contractors, some folks in new construction, but we've really stressed to them, if you've got an order on the books, we would rather know about it sooner than have you hold off and order it, just shortly before you need it. And they weren't necessarily accustomed to that. It's not necessarily that they were expecting us to always be able to ship immediately, although certainly that was great when we could. But they certainly weren't accustomed to letting us know 6 months in advance of when they were going to need something. And basically what we have had to educate our customers or try to re-educate them on is the idea that we will take any information you can give us, even if it is way, way, way in advance, because that just helps us ensure that we can meet your needs when those needs do come in even if they are months down the road. And, the other thing that really kind of is a big deal in the construction industry, you hear about it all the time, is the labor shortage. So the way I look at it, if I ever can't get a customer product of mine that they need when they need it, well, I'm completely wasting their opportunity for labor at that time. So they've got a crew lined up to do something. I can't get them product. That's time with that crew we and they are never going to get back. And so I just think, communication really becomes the important rule in all this. And folks communicating needs back and forth, keeping each other informed. And, honestly, it's been an exercise even for our own team here on the manufacturing floor, because, we were everyone would be kind of fat and happy, knowing that we had raw materials when we needed them and we could just run stuff. And, now suddenly we were faced with shortages and challenges, and it forced us to have to relearn some of those communication skills and ability to work together and talk with each other.
Yeah, I think like with any challenge in life, it caused us all to have to batten down the hatches and really go through things way more meticulously. And I think, the result that you're sharing, your perception of as far as communication and the importance of being more timely on your planning is definitely a unintended positive consequence. I think if we can continue to over communicate versus under communicate and try and get really ahead of things, opposed to just flying by the seat of our pants like we were doing before, because everybody's hair was on fire and it was just so busy that, anything you threw up, somebody was going to buy. And, it was going to be, more than full price offers on a lot of these things. I mean, just the industry was a little bit bonkers for a while there. So it's interesting to watch how things are starting to settle out now at this point.
Yeah, and I guess as they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I think that's going to be the case for business. I think business is going to come out of this eventually more resilient and more prepared for what the future throws our way. That said, there'll always be something new.
Yeah, next challenge is always waiting around the next corner, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So one other thing, just to kind of wrap up this phase of the conversation, as a manufacturer and supplier, have you overproduced to get ahead in case, or have you been able to find a nice balance so that you're not sitting on too much material?
Well, we were definitely one of the companies that got hung with some of that influx of foreign metal that finally hit us in late 2022. And, I've got metal here in certain components that's going to last me through a chunk of 2023. We're kind of, one of the benefits in our particular business is our production time from raw material to finished goods is relatively short. So we're able to keep a lot of that stuff just in raw material form, and then, which doesn't take up as much space as finished goods, and then just run it as we need it. So overall, we're getting back on a lot of items. We are shipping within 1 to 2 or 3 days out the door, which is a far better feeling than, the worst part of 2022 when it was, I was telling customers 6 to 8 weeks sometimes before we'd be able to get their stuff in and run. So definitely better.
That's great. That sounds like you've found your footing again, and so that's great to hear and to confirm.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk more about your podcast. So the Construction Disruption Podcast, you started it, almost a couple of years ago now as well, similar time frame to us?
Correct. Yeah, we started in September of 2021.
Nice. So tell me this, why did you start your podcast? What drove that?
A lot of it was driven by the labor shortage that's out there. And we wanted something that would kind of give younger folks who might be looking at design or construction as a career opportunity, something for them to grab hold of and see what the new frontier is in construction. And so as we say, we try to uncover the future of design and remodeling and construction. And it's been a lot of fun just to learn so much from our guests.
Yeah, that's cool. It is a fun listen, and I really enjoyed being on it as a guest. And also noticed you got a co-host. Tell us a little bit about that and why you went that route and how you like the result.
So the original concept was we would have a host, which would usually be me, and then what we call a co-host. And the idea was I was the old guy, and then the co-host would be a younger guy. So you kind of have old school versus new tech, we'll say. A lot of the shows haven't lent themselves well to being able to play off of that idea, but it's been a lot of fun. So we actually have 3 young guys here who have been co-hosts at this point. Seth Heckerman is our VP of Sales. He's co-hosted a lot of shows. Ryan Bell, who's our creative director, has stepped in that role in several. And then also Ethan Young, who does a lot of our content creation and writing. So yeah, it's been really fun, and it has been fun sometimes to see I'm a very young baby boomer, I confess, but to see the baby boomer with the millennial or the Gen Z has been kind of fun.
That's awesome. So how many episodes have you all recorded and released so far?
So I think we've released 78, and we have about 85 that we've recorded. So we're generally striving for one a week. Been an interesting experience, as we originally thought we would do everything in-house, and then we started outsourcing. Now we're kind of bringing it back in-house, where we can control quality a little bit better, but we've gotten faster. One of the things we did do is originally we were releasing video, and after about 20 episodes, we quit doing that. We just didn't feel it was really helping our listenership or viewership much, but yet from a production standpoint, video added a whole new level of time and complexity.
I hear you there. And I see you.
Yes.
So share with us then, what have you learned in those, almost 80 episodes that have released? What's been surprising? And then also, what are you excited to confirm that you already thought you would enjoy about this process?
There are primarily 3 recurring themes that keep coming up. And I guess the first one, which really was surprising for me and has taught me a lot, was how much tech is infiltrating the construction industry. I mean, just like your own platform, WorkMax. I was so siloed in our world, which is primarily residential re-roofing, that the main tech that was exciting for us was the ability to do satellite imagery and things like that, which is great, and we use it all the time now. But I have been astounded by how much other tech is coming into our industry, in particular for larger projects and new construction. Another thing that keeps coming up a lot, obviously, is our country's ongoing shortage for, I won't just say affordable housing, but livable housing. And so it's been really neat. We've had a number of guests that we've talked to who are trying to address that either through modular or panelized type construction. But then along with that has also just been, the number of folks who are working on various types of offsite construction. We had interviewed the folks at Boxable and, talked a little bit about what they're doing, and several other folks doing offsite construction, and just fascinating the things that they're coming up with, and really, taking a very sophisticated sort of high-tech approach to construction that's just never been taken before. And so that's exciting for me. I think those 3 areas, affordable, livable housing, offsite construction, and continued tech, are going to continue to drive our industry. And I know they'll be popping up on the show a whole lot more in the future as well.
Yeah, what I like about what you're sharing is that those are all things that are going to help us improve and not only provide a better, more efficient service for hopefully a more reasonable dollar, but also less waste and more efficiency. So that's awesome.
Good point. Good point.
So is there anything super surprising or any experience or event that has happened on the show that comes to mind?
You know, the one of the I think it was our very first episode. I'd reached out to a friend of mine called Paula. Her name is Paula Parker, and I had known her when she worked for a trade show I was involved with, and knew that she was doing this thing. She calls herself an alchemist, and she's a meatball aficionado. But it was really fascinating because what we ended up talking about was the process of change. So as we looked at construction disruption and what are the things that are going to be real game changers or disruptions in our industry, she had some really neat perspectives on the human emotions, the human side of going through change. And how do you lead change? How do you inspire change? How do you get people willing to go through the pain of change? And that was, I believe, our very first episode. I think we had an introductory episode, and then Paula was number 2. But just really surprising hearing her. And, I had known her as a sales lady for a trade show, and she just had incredible insight talking about experiences in her own community and her own life.
That's awesome. Well, we've had some guests talk about similar topics, but I definitely have to have our producer reach out to Paula too and talk with her. That sounds like it'd be a fascinating episode.
She's a great guest. You really should. Yeah, she really is.
That's awesome. So and that really leads into my next question, and maybe the answer is the same. Is there one episode that comes to mind that you would hope people really check out?
Yeah. And oddly enough, this episode is not so much about change as it is about what stays the same. And it was an episode probably along about episode 20 we did with Frank Farmer. Frank is a longtime veteran of our industry, the home improvement industry, on the leadership and sales and management side. And, what Frank talked about was he brought us back to the reality that even though a lot of things change, products change, practices change, technology changes, the principles of people and what people want and what they expect out of relationship, those things don't change. So we have to be careful that we don't let all of that change in the things that are changing cause us to pull away from those personal relationships. And that one really does stand out in my mind. He's just an incredibly thoughtful, insightful guy. So it's Frank Farmer, American Metal Roofs. I think it was about episode 20 or so.
Awesome. We'll encourage our guests to certainly check that one out as well. So sounds like a couple of great episodes that hopefully they can enjoy from your team as well.
And I must say your episode, which isn't released yet, is fantastic as well.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a great time. It was a lot of fun.
Very good.
So, Todd, is there anything else that you wanted to cover and discuss before we get into maybe some fun questions here at the end?
I'm anxious for fun questions. I guess the one thing I would say is thing that I've been thinking a lot about lately is the customer experience. So I was sitting listening to a digital marketer a couple months ago, and she reminded me of a joke I had made years ago that we were all just in this giant race to fill up the internet with content. And she said, to some degree, we've kind of hit that. She said, if someone goes and Googles for anything, they're going to get so many search results that they can't possibly cover them all. So she said, to a large degree, we've covered the content and getting in front of people. She said, now it's going to come back to customer experience. And what is the experience that customer has, not just on our website, but, if they do interact with us on the phone or in person or however. And she said, it's that customer experience that's going to set the successful companies apart and above from the others. It used to be you just wanted the number one spot on Google, and that's what was going to set you apart. And she said, we've surpassed that at this point. So I thought that was really interesting, and just have been thinking a lot about that customer experience. We have an event coming up called the Metal Roofing Summit in late April, and I'll be speaking specifically on the customer experience and the importance of it, what that means.
That's awesome. Where is that event going to be held?
It is in beautiful Dayton, Ohio, at the University of Dayton Marriott. Everyone always wants to visit Dayton. Actually, it is kind of a cool city and a neat location, but yeah, it's the end of April. So if this airs before that, I invite everybody to check that out at metalroofingsummit.com.
That's awesome. We'll put a link in the show notes so that listeners can check that out. So awesome. Well, all right. You were excited to get to the fun questions, so let's do that. So this is me getting Todd back. He zinged these out to me at the end of their podcast. I thought that was actually kind of fun, so I thought you might appreciate having a little bit of that on here too. So, all right. First question, Todd, what is the first car that you ever owned?
The first one I ever owned that I paid for was a 1984 Plymouth Laser. And they became such rust buckets, you can't find them any place anymore. But it was a cool car at the time.
Love it. Mine was a Ford Granada, so similar. 1980.
I like the Ford Granada.
All right. So bucket list vacation.
Definitely Italy. I've been there once on business, but really want to go back to Italy and take my wife sometime. So we are going to do that one of these days.
Love that. I've done that once too. And same thing. I got to get back. It was amazing. What part of Italy do you want to hit first?
Well, I was only in northern Italy when I was there on business, so I think I would probably start there and then head into the southern areas in Rome.
Perfect. All right, that's a great location. What about what would you like to be remembered for?
Yeah, I think someone that cares about people, someone that thinks more about relationships, and for me, if that gives me an opportunity to share my faith with somebody, I always value that. But really just realizing that at the end of the day, we're all humans, and it really is the relationship that's important. If I can share something real quick with you. So something I really enjoy doing, and unfortunately, because we're not live and in person, I can't do it. But if I'm speaking to an audience, a lot of times if I have time at the end of my talk, I'll pull out a $20 bill. Used to pull out a $5, but I got to pull out a 20 these days. And I'll hold it up and I'll wave and say, does anyone want a $20 bill? And, most people aren't too timid. Yeah, I'll take a $20 bill. So then I wad it up and uncrinkle it and still hold it up. Does anyone still want the 20? Oh, yeah, I want a $20 bill. So then I'll throw it on the floor and smush it around underneath my shoe and pick it up again and say, does anyone still want the $20 bill? And everyone's like, yeah. And, of course, I give it to somebody. I pull a fresh one out of my wallet and give them that one. But anyway, then I use that as a time to remind them that the people we run into our lives are a little muddied. Sometimes they've been messed around a little by life. They may be a little crinkled, a little crumpled, a little frayed around the edges, but they are still humans. They are still God's children. They are still created. And they are still just as valued even after that crumpling around as they were when they were fresh and new. And so I kind of liken between the crumpled up $20 bill and that. So it's always kind of fun.
Yeah, that's a beautiful illustration and a great thought. Thank you for sharing that. I think you're tracking well for how you want to be remembered.
Well, I'm blessed by the opportunities I'm given, that's for sure.
Well, that's awesome. Well, we're blessed to have you, so thank you for joining us. All right. Now, is there a product in the last few years that you bought that you feel like really changed your life?
Yes. This is going to, and actually my wife bought it for me. There's this thing, I think it was a Shark Tank product called Peeps. Peeps. It is not the marshmallow.
Not the candy, the Easter.
No, it's an eyeglass cleaner. And so it's this amazing device that you can use to clean your eyeglasses that cleans them cleaner than they've ever been before, and they actually stay clean. And so for someone like me who wears glasses, the Peeps are pretty awesome. You can get them on Amazon for $30. Best $30 my wife ever spent.
Cool. I'll have to check those out. I actually do remember that episode. That's funny. Funny you bring that up. All right. What about a non-family friend who has been a regular part of your life for the longest?
Yeah, that's kind of fun for me to think about. So actually, someone I work with, he and I met when we were like 12 years old in school. Guy by the name of Eric Boris. He's our VP of development here. I've had the privilege of working with him for almost 30 years. But that's probably the guy that I have had regular contact with the longest in my life that isn't a relative.
That's awesome. Cool story. What about, would you rather wear bell-bottom pants or have your hair styled in a mohawk?
Well, since I have no hair, I would take the mohawk hair. I as goofy as it may look, goofy-wise, I'd probably rather wear the bell-bottoms, but yeah, if it got me some hair back, I would wear the mohawk.
I'm with you. We'd both be rocking the mohawk. No question about it. That's funny. All right. So aside from being a stand-up comedian on the side, do you have a hidden talent? And if so, what is it?
I can type quite quickly with two fingers. I was back in school in the time where they taught typing, not keyboarding. And I never took it. And then, because I didn't think I'd ever have to use it, so then I ended up being an English major in college where I was typing all the time. And now, seems like all I do is type emails. So, yes, I have learned to type incredibly quickly with two fingers. And oddly enough, they are often my middle fingers, which is even stranger for someone who's
That is strange. A lot of angry emails going out.
Yeah, exactly.
Sweet. That's funny. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I've seen people do it's usually the index finger though. So
yeah. I don't know why my middle fingers are my longest fingers, so they're closest to the keyboard. That's the only thing I can figure out.
Who could argue with that logic? Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun to have you on today. We really appreciate you joining us. And I just thankful again for your example and for your positive influence and efforts in the industry. We do appreciate having great leadership and even more importantly, a great voice to lead these conversations like you're doing over on your podcast. So encourage the listeners to check out the Construction Disruption podcast. And again, we'll link a couple of the shows that Todd mentioned here, episode number 2 and then 20-ish, sounds like. But appreciate you and look forward to catching up again down the road when we have the opportunity.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for what you're doing. This is cool stuff. So thank you for the opportunity.
You bet, Todd. Be well, brother.
You too. Take care.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.